The day they lowered Randall's casket into the warm Arizona soil, my son put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything now." And I believed him, not because he was always reliable, but because I was too tired to argue. I was 78 and had just buried the man I'd shared a life with for over 50 years. Randall wasn't perfect. He had a temper, forgot birthdays, and never fixed the broken step on the back porch. But he was mine. And more than anything, he made this old house feel full. Now, with the guests gone and the house quiet except for the creaking of the ceiling fan, I stood in the kitchen, not knowing what to do with my hands. The casserole dishes were stacked on the counter. Everyone had brought food, like grief could be fed into silence. That night, I slept sitting up in the recliner, the one with Randall's dent in the cushion. I couldn't face our bed, couldn't lie down where he used to breathe beside me. The house creaked like it was trying to remember how to be empty. The next morning, the doorbell rang at 6:40. I shuffled in my robe, thinking maybe someone forgot a dish. But it was Jared, my son, a duffel bag in one hand, a cardboard box under the other arm, and his phone clamped between shoulder and ear. "Just dropped the boys at school," he said, walking past me into the hallway. "They're staying with Marla this week." I blinked. "You're here early." "Yeah, well, I figured you'd need help sorting things out. Paperwork, bills, insurance." He paused and looked around the living room. "Place hasn't changed a bit, huh?" "I liked it the way it was," I said, but he wasn't listening. By noon, he had moved into the guest room. By evening, he was making lists. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom, not at your age. And this house, well, you know it's a lot to manage." He said it kindly, like a man offering a rescue boat to someone floating in shallow water. And I nodded, because saying no felt too hard, too soon. We went through Randall's things the next day. Jared was fast with it, decisive. "You don't need this, right?" he'd say, holding up a fishing rod, an old coat, the worn boots Randall wore every Sunday morning to get the paper. "I'd like to keep that," I said about the boots. He sighed but didn't argue. That was the last time he asked. By the end of the week, Randall's dresser was empty, and Jared had begun storing his own clothes in it. He brought over a second laptop, set it up in the dining room. His job let him work remotely, he said. He liked the quiet. He said it often. "I like the quiet here, Mom. It's peaceful." It was peaceful because I moved silently from room to room, not wanting to disturb. I made us lunch. I kept the laundry going. I let him pick the channel every night. It didn't feel like a sacrifice then, just the natural shifting of things. But the quiet began to feel tight around the edges. He started sleeping later, working less. When I asked if he wanted to go through the garage, he said, "I'll get to it, Mom. You don't have to remind me." And I hadn't. Not once. He began talking about options. Downsizing, equity. "This house could bring in good money, Mom. You don't need all this space." "I'm not selling the house," I said, not even looking up from my crossword. He laughed like I was being quaint. "We'll see." That night, I sat on the back steps. The broken one creaked under me. I could still see Randall's cigarette burns on the railing, though he hadn't smoked in 20 years. I held his mug in my hands. It still smelled faintly of coffee and Old Spice. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. But a knot had started to form in my stomach. Small, hard, quiet. The next morning, Jared stood in the kitchen, holding a box of cereal. "Where's the good coffee?" he asked. "I didn't buy any this week." He gave me a look, part amused, part irritated. "Well, add it to the list." I'll need my own shelf, by the way. Can't keep squeezing my stuff between soup cans. That was the first time he said my stuff. It wouldn't be the last. At church that Sunday, people asked how I was holding up. I smiled, nodded. My son's staying with me for a while, helping out. They all said how lucky I was. I didn't correct them. When I came home, Jared was in Randall's chair, shoes kicked off, television blasting. He looked so comfortable, so planted. I walked past him, into the kitchen. I opened the pantry and saw his shelf already arranged. Labeled. Claimed. It's just a shelf, I told myself. But I didn't believe it. He started calling it the house instead of your house. And each time he did, the word stuck in the air like a bad smell. Has the house been appraised recently? He asked one morning over toast. I looked up from the sink. Appraised? Yeah, just out of curiosity. You know, market trends, insurance, resale value, things like that. I dried my hands slowly. No, I haven't. Jared nodded, like that confirmed something. I'll look into it. Might be good to know. This neighborhood's booming. I didn't answer. He took my silence for approval. That was becoming a pattern. That same afternoon, I caught him walking around the backyard with his phone out, taking pictures. Real estate tools, he said, waving it off. There's an app that estimates based on square footage and condition. He wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. I sat on the porch and watched him measure the length of the fence with slow, confident steps, like he already owned the place. Like he was taking inventory. That night, he brought up renovations. Open concept would really suit this place. Knock out that wall between the kitchen and living room. Maybe update the fixtures, I said. I like my walls where they are. He smiled. I know. But think about resale. Buyers love light and space. I'm not selling. He shrugged, but something in his face hardened. Just trying to help, Mom. But it wasn't help. Not really. It was something else. Some slow rearranging of power. And I, like a fool, had let him through the door. The next week he started receiving mail here. Bank letters, subscription boxes, packages. His name on my address. I asked him gently about it. Oh, he said, it's just easier. I'm here more than anywhere else these days, and you've got the space. He didn't ask. He never asked. He began sleeping in late, unshaved, shirtless, leaving cereal bowls in the sink. The guest room morphed into his bedroom, shirts over chairs, dirty socks on the floor, drawers full of things he never unpacked. A man settling in. And still, he said, it's temporary, of course. I started sleeping poorly. The old bed creaked louder without Randall's weight on one side. I missed his snoring. I missed the little sound he made before rolling over. And in the silence, I heard Jared's phone calls, long late-night conversations in the kitchen, laughing, pacing, discussing money. I overheard him say, "It's a done deal, she'll come around. The house is practically mine already." That was the moment the knot in my stomach hardened into something sharper. At church, I ran into Nancy Duval, whose daughter had gone through something similar. My son-in-law moved in to help out, she said, air quoting the phrase. By the time she realized what was happening, she was sleeping in her own garage. I laughed politely, but I didn't tell her Jared had already taken the recliner and most of the fridge. 2 days later, I caught him in the shed, going through Randall's tools. He held up the drill. This one still works. Might sell it. I stepped forward. You're not selling your father's things. Mom, he said slowly, like I was being childish. He's gone. You don't need a dozen screwdrivers. Half of this stuff's just rusting. It's not about needing, I said, my voice lower than I expected. "It's about respect." He rolled his eyes, then set the drill down with just enough care to pass as reluctant compliance. But I saw it. The irritation. The assumption of control. I stood there in the doorway of the shed long after he left, breathing in the dusty scent of metal, oil, and the faint memory of Randall's aftershave. I touched the wooden handle of the hammer he'd always used, the one with the chipped grip, and I made myself a quiet promise. This house is mine, and I will not be erased inside it. The first time he rearranged the living room, he didn't even mention it. I came back from the grocery store and found the couch pushed against the opposite wall, the coffee table gone entirely, and Randall's old record player unplugged and shoved into the hall closet. "Don't worry," Jared said, sipping a soda with his feet on the ottoman. "I just moved some things around to make better flow. You'll love it once you get used to it." I stood there holding 2 heavy bags and didn't say a word. He didn't offer to help me unload them either. He just turned back to the football game and said, "Oh, we'll need to get a bigger TV if I'm going to keep working from home. That little thing's giving me a headache." I put the groceries away one by one, breathing slow, steady, through the kind of anger that doesn't shout. It simmers. Randall used to say my silences were more dangerous than any storm, but Jared had never learned to read them. That same week, he brought home a dog. No warning, no conversation. It was a Labrador mix, young and loud and completely untrained. "Found him at a shelter," Jared explained proudly. "Great with kids." "I figured he'd be company for you." "I never said I wanted a dog," I replied, eyeing the animal's muddy paws on my carpet. "Well, you've got one now. Let's see if we can't fatten him up a bit." He winked, like this was some spontaneous adventure we were on together. The dog, Diesel, he called it, destroyed one of my slippers, knocked over a lamp, and barked every time the wind changed. Jared never walked him. That task fell to me. He was too busy with work, which these days seemed to consist mostly of scrolling his phone and heating up leftovers. Then came the bedroom. I'd been sleeping on the couch for 2 nights, my back sore, neck stiff, because Jared claimed the guest room had a leak in the ceiling. I offered him my bed out of courtesy. "Just for the night," I said. He never gave it back. The next evening, when I came down the hall with my robe and book, the door was closed. I knocked gently. "Oh, hey," he said, cracking the door open. "Yeah, I spread out a bit. Hope that's okay." I saw my robe hanging on the inside hook, my nightlight unplugged, the bed rearranged. I slept on the couch again, Randall's old blanket pulled over my legs. I stared at the ceiling fan and counted the slow, uneven turns until dawn. He began locking the bedroom door. "Just habit," he said when I asked. "Privacy, you know." The house was feeling less like mine with each passing day. Photos came down. New things appeared. His Bluetooth speaker. A poster from his college days. A weird metal sculpture he said was modern. Even the smells changed. My potpourri overpowered by his aftershave. By the burnt plastic scent of his reheated meals. I said nothing. Not yet. But every evening, I sat on the back porch, alone, in Randall's chair. The broken steps still creaked, and I never let him fix it. It was the only part of this house that hadn't changed under Jared's hands. One afternoon, I caught him showing the house to someone. A woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, sunglasses, clipboard in hand. "This would be the kitchen," he was saying, his voice all salesman smooth. Bit outdated, but solid bones. Great resale value. I stood frozen behind the screen door, invisible, like a ghost in my own home. When he saw me, he smiled tightly. "Mom, I thought you were out. This is just a friend from the agency. She's helping me get a sense of the market." "What market?" I asked quietly. He looked at the woman. She looked away. "Nothing serious," he said. "Just exploring options. You know, thinking ahead." He didn't say for who. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my own face in the mirror. Randall's comb still sat on the shelf. My lipstick had dried out. My shoulders looked smaller than I remembered. I said aloud, just to myself, "He thinks it's his now." And I knew. This wasn't about sharing anymore. It wasn't even about grief. It was about territory, ownership, inheritance claimed not with kindness but with occupation. And I wasn't going to let him take 1 inch more. He started calling me forgetful. Not in a cruel way, no. Jared had always preferred his knives wrapped in smiles. "Didn't you already tell me that, Mom? You sure you didn't misplace it again? I'll handle it. Don't stress yourself." At first, I brushed it off. Grief does strange things to memory. The week after Randall died, I put a can opener in the freezer and my keys in the mailbox. But I wasn't confused, just tired. Still, Jared's tone changed. A little slower when he spoke to me, like I was hard of hearing. Exaggerated gestures. Dismissive pats on the arm. He spoke about me when I was in the room. "She likes her routines," he told the mailman one morning, as if I weren't standing 3 feet away. "Keeps her calm." That same afternoon, I found him rummaging through my filing cabinet. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just organizing some stuff for you. You had statements going back to 1996 in here." "That's not safe." He had sorted everything into folders, labeled with sticky notes. One folder was marked House, Transfer Options. I pulled it from the pile and flipped it open. Printouts. Articles. A list of Arizona real estate attorneys. "Jared," I said slowly, "what is this?" He leaned against the desk. "Just information. You should know your options, that's all." I closed the folder. "These are your options, not mine." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's the same thing now." That night I couldn't sleep. My back hurt from the couch, but it wasn't just that. Something else gnawed at me. Something bigger than Jared's presence or the noise or the dog. He thought I had no one, no allies, no leverage. Just an old woman in a worn-down house, too soft to resist and too tired to fight. And maybe I had been. Until now. The next morning, I went to the bank. Put on my best blouse, combed my hair, took the little cloth bag of important documents. The deed, the will, Randall's death certificate. The branch manager, a man in his 40s with kind eyes, listened carefully. "I want to make sure my assets are protected," I said. "From my family, if necessary." He didn't flinch. "You're not the first." We set up a new password, removed Jared's access. I signed documents with a hand steadier than I expected. He offered to call a financial advisor, someone who can talk you through the next steps, quietly. I nodded. And discreetly. I came home to find Diesel, the dog, chewing on the arm of my favorite chair. Jared was nowhere in sight. Just a half-eaten sandwich on the counter and his laptop open, buzzing with notifications. I sat in the kitchen and waited. When he came in an hour later, he looked surprised. "You're up early." "It's past noon," I said. He laughed. "Yeah, well, late night. Work's been crazy." "Jared," I said quietly, "I'd like my room back." He blinked. "What?" "My room. The master. I've been sleeping on a couch in my own home for 2 weeks." He stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. But I've got all my stuff in there. You can move it. The guest room is fine for you. His face changed, not angry, but calculating. Is this about the filing cabinet? He asked. No, I said. It's about respect. Come on, Mom. He tried to laugh it off. We're family. That's exactly why this matters. He didn't answer. Just stared at me, then walked down the hall and slammed the door. I spent the afternoon moving boxes. Bit by bit, I took my clothes back. My books, my nightlight, my hand cream. I placed Randall's photo back on the dresser where it belonged. At dinner, Jared didn't speak to me, just reheated a frozen pizza and ate in silence. The dog growled when I passed. The next morning, the locks on the bedroom door were changed. He'd installed a keypad. I need privacy, he said without looking up. It's nothing personal. No, nothing personal at all. But I sat on the back step that evening and ran my fingers over the cold, chipped wood and thought, this house remembers who it belongs to. And soon, so will he. It was at dinner that the words came out, as casual as if he were announcing the weather. Jared had ordered takeout, Chinese, because, as he said, why waste time cooking when we've got money for better? He was on his second beer, his sleeves rolled up, the dog asleep at his feet. The television hummed in the background while he scrolled his phone with one hand and shoveled low mine with the other. Then he looked up at me, grinned, and said to no one in particular, "Soon this house will be ours, boys." The words landed like glass shattering on tile. I glanced toward the corner of the room. His sons, my grandsons, were half listening, faces lit by the glow of their iPads. Neither looked up. Maybe they'd heard it before. Maybe this wasn't the first time he'd said it. I set my fork down carefully. What did you just say? Jared blinked, then smirked, as if he hadn't realized I was paying attention. Relax, Mom. I'm just saying the boys love this place. Big yard, quiet street. It'll be a good home for them one day. One day, I repeated, slow and flat. Not today. Not while I'm still breathing. He laughed. Nobody's pushing you out. You'll always have a spot here. But you know what Dad would have wanted? Security for the family. Your father wanted me safe. He told me that 100 times. Safe with us, Jared countered quickly. Look, Mom, it's just logical. Houses get passed down. That's how it works. You don't need to worry yourself about maintenance and taxes. I'll handle all that. You can just live here. As if I were a guest, a tenant. I folded my napkin, placed it on the table, and stood. This is my house, Jared. Randall and I built our life here, paid every bill, mended every crack. I'm not handing it over because you've decided you're tired of rent. His smile slipped, just a little. You're being dramatic. Am I? He didn't answer, just turned back to his food. The boys exchanged a glance, then went back to their screens. That night, I couldn't bring myself to go near the couch. I sat instead in the kitchen with the light off, Randall's photo in my lap. His smile in that picture, half proud, half tired, seemed to say, "Are you going to let him walk all over you, Mabel?" I whispered back, "Not anymore." The next morning, Jared was already on the phone when I came in. His voice carried easily. Yes, I've got the deed. Well, technically it's in her name still, but she'll sign. She doesn't need all this space. A pause. Then lower. She's 80. She'll come around. I stopped in the doorway. He froze when he saw me, then covered the phone and muttered, "Business call. Nothing important." But I'd heard enough. After he left that afternoon, I took out a shoebox I hadn't touched in years. Inside were all the papers Randall and I had guarded carefully. The deed, the insurance, the mortgage documents marked paid in full. My name in black ink, steady, permanent. I laid them out on the kitchen table like cards in a game. Proof. My shield. I imagined Jared's face when he realized I wasn't the frail woman he thought I was. That evening, when he came back smelling of beer and cigarettes, I asked him straight, "Jared, do you believe this house belongs to you?" He chuckled. "Mom, come on. Don't twist things. I'm just trying to look out for the family." "Answer me." His eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the locked master bedroom. He didn't answer. That silence told me more than any words could. I knew then, if I didn't draw a line soon, there wouldn't be a line left to draw. The next morning, I dressed with more care than I had in weeks. A clean blouse, pressed slacks, the pearls Randall had given me on our 50th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, he needs to see me steady, not broken, not small. The law office was 2 blocks from the courthouse, tucked between a pawn shop and a bakery that smelled like heaven. The receptionist barely looked up when I walked in, but the attorney, Mr. Alvarez, his card said, stood and shook my hand warmly. He couldn't have been more than 45, but his eyes were kind, the kind that had seen other mothers and grandmothers sit where I was sitting. "What can I do for you today, Mrs. Dale?" I laid the deed on his desk, smoothing the paper flat. "I want clarity about this house. My son, he says things, makes suggestions, acts like it already belongs to him. I need to know exactly where I stand." He scanned the deed, nodded once. "It's very simple. The property is in your name alone. While you are alive, no one can force you to give it up, sell it, or transfer it unless you choose." No power of suggestion, no casual promises change that. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. "So he has no claim?" "None. Not unless you sign it over. Even then, it would be permanent. That's why you must be cautious. A signature is forever." I pressed my palms together. He talks like I'm already halfway in the grave, like I don't have a say anymore. Mr. Alvarez leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You have the only say that matters. As long as you can hold a pen, this house is yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I sat straighter. "And if he tries?" "Then you call me, immediately." When I left the office, the sun felt hotter, sharper. But inside me, something colder had settled. The truth. Solid, heavy, unshakable. That evening, Jared came home late, loud, dropping his keys on the counter. "Where have you been all day?" "Downtown," I said simply. He raised an eyebrow. "Shopping?" "No. At a lawyer's office." That stopped him. For once, he didn't have a ready line. "I wanted to be clear about my rights," I continued. "And I am. This is my house, Jared. No one else's." His jaw tightened. He gave a short laugh. "You think I'm trying to steal from you? Jesus, Mom, I'm your son. Everything I do is for you." "Then prove it," I said softly. "By respecting what's mine." He stared at me, eyes narrowing. Then he grabbed a beer from the fridge and left the room without another word. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded over the deed. Randall's photo watched from the mantel. I whispered, "I did what you'd have done, love. Drew the line." But drawing a line only matters if you defend it. And I knew Jared wasn't finished. Later that night, I heard him on the phone again, his voice low, sharp. "She went to a lawyer," he muttered. "Yeah, I don't know what she thinks she's doing. But trust me, She's old. She'll cave. She always does. I lay on the couch in the dark, eyes open, breath steady. Not this time. It started with the car keys. I was heading to the store, purse on my shoulder, list folded neatly in my pocket. When I reached for the little dish by the door, the keys weren't there. I searched the counter, the table, even checked my coat pockets twice. Nothing. Then Jared strolled in, jingling them in his hand. Oh, those? I figured I'd take the car today. Need to run some errands. I stared at him. You have your own truck. It's low on gas. This one's better on mileage anyway. He tossed the keys in the air, caught them. I'll be back later. No. The word surprised both of us. Firm, sharp, unshaken. That's my car, Jared. You don't take it without asking. Give me the keys. He blinked, then smirked. Don't get worked up, Mom. You're not going far anyway. I'll fill it up for you. Bring it back. Relax. I stepped forward, held out my hand. Now. Something shifted in his face, amusement curdling into annoyance. He dropped the keys into my palm a little too hard, like a dare. Fine, but you don't have to bite my head off. I closed my fist tight around them. For the first time since he'd moved in, I hadn't yielded. That night, the air in the house was different, tense, restless. He sat in the recliner with the television blaring, his beer sweating on the side table, glancing at me like I was some new, inconvenient problem. The next morning, I found the fridge nearly empty. The bread, the eggs, even the leftover soup I'd made were gone. The boys were hungry, he said when I asked. Lighten up. Food's food. So I went to the store again, alone, my spine straighter than it had been in years. When I came home with bags, Jared was sprawled on the couch, shoes on the armrest. He didn't move to help. Just said, "Did you get the good coffee this time?" I set the bags down with a thud. Jared, you are not my husband. You are not the head of this house. You're a guest, and you've overstayed your welcome. His head snapped toward me. Excuse me? You heard me. He sat up slowly, eyes narrowing. After everything I've done for you, I'm the one keeping this place running. You'd be lost without me. I almost laughed, an ugly, bitter laugh that burned in my chest. I've kept this house running for 50 years, Jared, through Randall's sickness, through your father's death, through every bill and every storm. Don't you dare stand in my kitchen and tell me I'd be lost without you. His mouth opened, then closed. For once he had no words. I carried the groceries into the kitchen, unshaken, each can and carton set firmly in its place. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't waver. That night, when I sat on the porch, the broken step under me, I realized something. I was done shrinking, done apologizing for existing. Jared slammed doors louder the next day. The dog barked more. The boys barely looked up from their screens when I greeted them. A silent punishment, his way of pressing me back into my corner. But I stayed upright. I made my tea, folded my laundry, kept the deed in the drawer by my bed. And every time I touched it, I reminded myself, this is mine, not his. The next time he raised his voice, I was ready. I started small. That's how women like me have always done it. Quiet corrections, one drawer at a time. The first thing I took back was my nightstand. Jared had stacked his chargers, receipts, and beer caps on it like it was a junk table. I waited until he went out for the evening, then carried every last item into the guest room and left them in a neat pile on the bed. When I placed my reading lamp and glasses back where they belonged, the room felt a little less suffocating. Next came the dresser. Randall's photo went back on top, in its rightful place, beside the ceramic dish where I used to drop my earrings every night. I put my sweaters back in the drawers. I didn't ask permission. I didn't need it. By the end of the week, the walls began to look familiar again. I rehung the cross-stitch I'd made the year Randall and I married. I moved Jared's poster, some faded thing from his college days, into the closet. He noticed, of course. "Why'd you move my stuff?" he asked one morning, his voice tight. "Because it's my room," I said simply. He stared at me for a long time, then muttered something under his breath and left for the day. The silence that followed was sweeter than music. I claimed the kitchen next. My kitchen. Jared had started leaving empty bottles on the counter, greasy pizza boxes on the table, like the room belonged to no one. I scrubbed every surface until it shined, put my dishes back in their cabinets, and set the table for one. Me. That evening, when he came home and saw it, he smirked. "Trying to make a point?" "I don't need to try," I replied. For the first time, he didn't laugh. The boys noticed too. One of them muttered, "Dad says it's our house now." He said it casually, like repeating a lesson. I crouched to look him in the eyes. "No, sweetheart. This house is mine. It always has been. And I'll decide what happens here." He didn't answer, just shrugged and went back to his game. But the words had been said aloud, and that mattered. I took back the porch after that. Randall's chair had become Jared's favorite smoking spot, his cigarette butts piling up in an old tin can. One afternoon, I carried the tin to the trash and set out a fresh cushion instead. When I sat there with my tea that evening, the air was lighter, almost like Randall was sitting beside me again. Jared came out, saw me, and frowned. "Thought you hated that chair." "I never hated it," I said. "It was always mine." He exhaled smoke in irritation, but he didn't try to sit down. That was the victory. Small, invisible to anyone else, but it kept my spine straight. The real battle came with the photos. One night, I found that Jared had taken down the family pictures from the hallway wall. The ones of Randall holding our first grandchild. Of me and Jared on his high school graduation day. Of our family reunions under the pecan tree. In their place hung a glossy print of a desert sunset. "Too cluttered," he explained when I confronted him. "Buyers prefer neutral." I didn't argue. I just waited until the house was empty the next morning. Then I rehung every photo, nail by nail, frame by frame, until the hallway told our story again. When Jared came back, his face darkened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I looked him square in the eye. "No, Jared, you are." He stared at me a long time, jaw tight, then stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. The sound rattled the picture frames, but they stayed on the wall. That night, I lay in bed for the first time in weeks. My bed. My quilt pulled over me, Randall's photo watching from the dresser. Diesel barked at something outside. Jared cursed under his breath. The boys argued over their game. But for the first time since Randall's funeral, I slept in my own room, under my own roof, without apology. And I woke with a thought, clear as morning light. Taking back a house isn't loud. It's quiet, steady. One nail, one drawer, one photograph at a time. It happened over something small, as these things always do. A glass left on the counter. I had just finished wiping the kitchen table when I noticed it. His half-empty beer, ring of moisture spreading underneath. I carried it to the sink, rinsed it out, and set it upside down on the rack. Nothing dramatic, just cleaning up. A few minutes later, Jared walked in. He looked at the sink, then at me. Where's my drink? In the sink, I said. It was warm. I rinsed it. His voice sharpened. I wasn't done with it. You'd left it there for an hour, Jared. I thought you'd finished. He slammed the fridge door harder than necessary, pulled out another can. You can't just decide things for me. You do this all the time, acting like you know best, like I'm some kid. I felt heat in my cheeks, but I kept my tone calm. I was cleaning, that's all. He cracked the can open, foam spilling over his hand. No, that's not all. You've been moving my things, changing the room, hanging up all your old crap again. You think I don't notice? It's my house, I said evenly, and that was when he snapped. He slammed the can down on the counter, liquid splashing onto the floor. Your house? Jesus, Mom. You're 78 years old. You can barely remember where you put your glasses half the time. Dad's gone, and you're not thinking straight. Somebody has to take charge, and that somebody is me. My hands gripped the edge of the counter, but my voice stayed steady. Don't you dare use my age as a weapon. I'm not, he barked. His face was red now, eyes sharp and mean. I'm being realistic. You think you can keep this place up on your own? You can't. You'll fall, you'll forget to pay the bills, He broke off, shaking his head. You'll burn the place down making tea, for Christ's sake. Something inside me went still. Cold. Are you ashamed of me? I asked quietly. His mouth opened, then shut. For a second I saw the boy he used to be. The boy who once brought me a dandelion bouquet from the yard, beaming with pride. But the moment passed, replaced by something harder. I'm not ashamed, he muttered. I'm embarrassed. There's a difference. The words sliced clean through me. For years I had bent myself smaller, softer, quieter, trying to make space for his moods. But there it was, plain as day. My son didn't see me as his mother anymore, just as an obstacle. I straightened my back. You will not talk to me that way in my own kitchen. He laughed, harsh and joyless. What are you going to do? Throw me out? Change the locks? I looked him dead in the eye. If I have to. He blinked, thrown off, then scoffed. You're bluffing. But I wasn't. And he saw it. The silence stretched, heavy as lead. Diesel whined from under the table. One of the boys peeked in from the hallway, eyes wide, then disappeared again. Finally, Jared grabbed his beer, muttered something I didn't catch, and stormed out to the porch. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the window panes. I stood there a long time, the words still burning in my ears. I'm embarrassed. I thought of Randall, how he used to place his hand at the small of my back in crowded rooms. A quiet reminder. You belong here. And now my own son had said the opposite. That night, lying awake in my reclaimed bedroom, I made a decision. The days of silence, of swallowing every slight, were over. If Jared wanted a fight over this house, he was about to learn I was not too old to defend it. The next morning, I woke with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. My knees ached, my hands were stiff, but I pushed through the pain, dressed in my good shoes, and took the bus into town. The teller at the bank recognized me right away. Mrs. Dale, she said kindly, we don't see you often. I need to speak with a manager, I replied. My voice didn't tremble. They led me into a small office with frosted glass walls. The manager, a young man named Carson, smiled politely. How can I help you today? I set my folder on his desk. Deed, account statements, power of attorney documents Jared had convinced me to sign years ago when Randall was sick. I want to change some things. Effective immediately. Carson scanned the papers, nodding slowly. All right. What are you looking to do? I want every account secured with a new password. No shared access. Cancel every automatic transfer linked to my son. And revoke this power of attorney. He hesitated. That's a significant change, Mrs. Dale. Are you sure? Yes. My voice was sharp enough to surprise even me. I've been too generous. Too trusting. That ends today. He studied me a moment, then nodded. All right. We'll need some signatures and ID, but it can be done. I pulled out my driver's license, the photo of me a decade younger but with the same set to the jaw. I signed each paper carefully, deliberate strokes of ink. With every page, I felt lighter. When we finished, Carson handed me a receipt folder. Everything is updated. Your son no longer has access. If he tries to use those accounts, it will be flagged. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want. Walking out of the bank, the sun seemed brighter. I bought myself a sandwich from the deli across the street, sat on a bench, and ate it slowly. For once, I wasn't rushing home to cook for someone else. I was feeding myself. When I returned, Jared was in the driveway, hood up on his truck, phone wedged between his shoulder and ear. His voice was sharp. I don't know what's wrong with the transfer. It should have cleared this morning. What do you mean declined? He saw me and lowered the phone. His eyes narrowed. Mom, did you touch the accounts? I walked past him calmly, purse on my shoulder. I secured what's mine. He followed me inside, slamming the door behind him. Do you have any idea what you've done? I had bills lined up, agreements. I set my bag down and faced him squarely. Your agreements are not my responsibility. Your debts are not mine to pay. That money is for my life, not your convenience. His voice rose. You've lost it. You're not thinking clearly. This is exactly why I should be in charge. No, Jared. I cut him off, my tone quiet but unshakable. This is why I should never have let you near my accounts in the first place. He froze, mouth open, no words coming. I continued. The bank knows. The lawyer knows. Every document says the same thing. This house is mine. The money is mine. And the decisions are mine. You can't take that from me. The silence that followed was heavy. Diesel barked once, then whimpered and went quiet. Jared finally shook his head, muttering, "Unbelievable," before storming out the back door. I stood in the kitchen, Randall's photo watching from the mantel. My hands shook from the adrenaline, but I didn't collapse. I didn't second guess. For the first time in years, I had drawn the line with ink as well as words. And I knew the fight was just beginning. It happened the night after I came back from the bank. I'd gone to brush my teeth, pajamas neatly folded at the end of my bed, Randall's photo on the dresser where I'd placed it again. When I turned the knob to my bedroom, the door wouldn't open. I tried again. Locked. Jared, I called down the hall. No answer. I knocked, harder this time. Jared, open this door. His voice came muffled from inside. I need some space, Mom. You've been difficult lately. This is my room. You'll be fine on the couch, he said, as if it were the simplest solution in the world. You like falling asleep in front of the TV anyway. I stood there, palm pressed against the door, blood rushing in my ears. He'd actually locked me out of my own bedroom. The rage didn't come like thunder. It came like ice. Slow, deliberate, cold. All right, I said finally. If that's how you want it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Randall's old recliner, blanket around my shoulders, listening to the steady thrum of Jared's snores through the wall. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Randall standing in the doorway, shaking his head the way he used to when someone crossed the line at work. You gonna let him get away with that, Mabel? By morning, my mind was set. While Jared was still sleeping, I called a locksmith. A man named Tim arrived within the hour, toolbox in hand. "Morning, ma'am. What seems to be the problem?" "The locks," I said. "All of them. I want them changed today." He blinked, surprised. "All of them?" "Yes. Every door, inside and out." Tim hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Shouldn't take more than a couple hours." The sound of drills and clicks echoed through the house. I kept glancing toward the guest room where Jared slept, his truck parked crooked in the driveway, his shoes tossed in the hall. He had no idea the walls around him were changing, one lock at a time. By noon, Tim handed me a small envelope. Inside were 3 shiny new keys. "Front door, back door, bedroom and shed," he said. "All rekeyed. Anyone without these is out of luck." I took the envelope in both hands, like it was a holy thing. "Thank you." He gave me a searching look. "You sure you're all right, ma'am? This seems big." "I've never been more sure," I said. When Jared finally stirred that afternoon, he wandered into the kitchen in yesterday's shirt, hair messy. He noticed the toolbox by the door. "What's all this?" "Repairs," I said calmly, setting a cup of tea on the table. "Things that should have been done years ago." He didn't ask further. He was too busy complaining about his phone bill. But that night, when he stumbled in late, smelling of beer, he discovered the truth. I heard it from the couch, the rattle of the knob, the fumbling, the muttered curse. He tried again, harder this time. "Mom," his voice carried through the hall. "What the hell? Why doesn't my key work?" I rose slowly, walked to the door, and stood on the other side of the wood that had once kept me out. "Because it isn't your house," I said evenly. "And those aren't your doors anymore." He pounded the frame with his fist. "Open this right now." "No." "You can't do this to me. I live here." "No, Jared," I said softly, firmly, like closing a book. "You stayed here. That's different." For a long moment, there was only his ragged breathing, the dog whining at his feet, the sound of him realizing the line had finally been drawn in steel and key. When he stormed out to his truck and slammed the door, I stood in the silence he left behind. My knees trembled, my hands shook, but I felt taller than I had in years. I went back to my bed, and slipped under the quilt. For the first time since Randall's funeral, I slept without fear that someone could shove me aside in my own house. The locks clicked quietly in my dreams, each turn of the key a promise. Never again. The pounding started before sunrise. I woke to the thud of fists on the front door, Diesel barking furiously, Jared's voice rising in anger. "Mom, open this door right now. What did you do?" I slipped into my robe, tied it tight, and walked to the hallway. Through the window beside the door, I saw him, hair wild, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot from a night in the truck. His breath smoked in the cool morning air as he pounded again, harder. "You changed the locks. Are you insane? This is my house, too." I opened the curtain just enough so he could see me. His face lit up with a grim sort of triumph, like he'd caught me in the act of betrayal. "Give me the new keys," he demanded, pressing his palm flat to the glass. "Now." I unlocked the screen window just enough to speak, but I didn't touch the deadbolt. My voice was calm, steady, almost quiet. "No." He blinked, thrown off by the word. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean this is my home. Mine. Randall and I built this life together, paid for every nail, every bill. The deed is in my name. And I will not be shut out of my own bedroom or my own house ever again." His jaw worked like he was chewing gravel. You can't do this to me. Where am I supposed to go? You're a grown man, Jared. You have a job, a truck, 2 hands. You'll figure it out. He slammed his fist against the frame so hard the glass rattled. You're throwing me into the street like some criminal after everything I've done for you? I raised my chin. What exactly have you done for me? He froze, lips parting, no words coming. I went on. You've eaten my food, slept in my bed, called this house yours while I slept on a couch, locked me out of my own room, and now you pound on my door like I owe you entry. You're my mother, he shouted, voice cracking with rage. Yes, I said quietly. And that used to mean something, but respect runs both ways, and you showed me none. Diesel barked louder, confused by the shouting. The boys sat in the truck behind him, wide-eyed, watching. I caught a glimpse of their faces, frightened, uncertain, and my heart twisted. But I didn't back down. Go home, Jared, I said, wherever that is now, because it isn't here. For a long time, all I heard was his ragged breathing. Then he spat out a curse and kicked the porch step. The old wood cracked further, the same step Randall had always promised to fix. You'll regret this, he said finally, voice low and venomous. You'll regret turning on your own family. Better regret than surrender, I replied. He stared at me one last time, eyes dark with something I didn't recognize anymore. Anger, yes, but also fear. Then he stormed back to his truck, yanked the door open, and slid behind the wheel. The engine roared, gravel spitting under the tires, and in a blink, he was gone down the street. The silence afterward was immense. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, my body trembling, my breath uneven. I expected tears, but none came. Instead, I felt something else. Space. Air. A house exhaling after years of being held hostage. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs I'd rehung. The locks gleamed new and solid. The house felt like mine again, not just in name, but in truth. When I reached the back porch, the morning sun was spilling gold across the yard. The cracked step groaned under my weight, same as it always had. But it was my creak, my sound. For the first time in years, I whispered aloud, "Home." And the house seemed to answer back in its own quiet way. He didn't stay gone for long. By late afternoon, the phone started ringing. Over and over, his name flashing on the screen. I let it buzz until the voicemail picked up. Then the text messages came, short, clipped, furious. You can't lock me out. This is illegal. I'll take you to court. Wait until the lawyer hears about this. I read them one by one, then set the phone face down on the table. The kettle whistled. I poured myself tea, steady hands, calm breath. At dusk, the sound of his truck came rumbling back into the driveway. I stood in the kitchen, listening to his boots crunch across the gravel, then the knock, loud, insistent. Mom. His voice was raw, urgent. We need to talk. I opened the curtain beside the door, but not the lock. His face was flushed, his shirt wrinkled like he hadn't changed all day. He looked less like a son and more like a cornered man. You can't do this, he said, forcing calm into his tone. You can't just throw your own son out. The law's on my side here. No, Jared, I said evenly. The law is on mine. He blinked, caught off guard. I held up a folder against the glass so he could see. I went to the lawyer. I went to the bank. Every paper, every deed, every account is in my name. This house is mine, and you have no claim. None. His jaw tightened. We'll see what a judge says. I almost smiled. A judge will say the same thing. You have no rights to what you didn't earn and don't own. For a moment, he just stood there, his hand twitching against the porch rail. Then he tried another tactic, his voice dropping into something almost pleading. After all I've done, after I moved in to help you, after I made sure you weren't alone, this is how you treat me? Like trash on the curb? I felt a bitter laugh rise, but I swallowed it down. Help me? You locked me out of my own room. You ate my food, drained my accounts, and called this house yours while I was still alive to hear it. That isn't help, Jared. That's taking. He flinched, the truth landing sharper than any accusation. You're ungrateful, he spat finally. Everything I did, and you can't even say thank you. I don't thank thieves, I said quietly. His eyes widened, a flash of hurt, or maybe rage, crossing his face. You think I'm a thief? I think you wanted what was never yours, and you thought I was too old, too weak to stop you. The silence between us was thick, heavy. Diesel whined in the truck, the boys shifting restlessly in the back seat, their faces pale in the dimming light. Jared leaned closer to the glass, his breath fogging it. You'll regret this, Mom. When you're alone, when no one comes to help you, you'll wish you'd let me stay. I didn't flinch. Better alone than disrespected. His hand slammed the door frame, but the lock held. The new steel didn't even rattle. He cursed under his breath, turned on his heel, and stalked back to the truck. The engine roared, the tires spat gravel, and then he was gone again. I stood there for a long time, the folder still in my hand, the documents inside steady and undeniable. My knees shook, but my spine did not. Randall's photo caught the last of the evening light on the mantel, his smile faint and knowing. I whispered to him. I showed him the papers. I showed him the truth. And for the first time in years, I felt not like someone's frail mother, but like the woman Randall had loved, clear, certain, unyielding. The phone rang again the next morning, but this time it wasn't Jared's name on the screen. It was Ethan, my eldest grandson. I hesitated before answering. His voice came fast, urgent. Grandma, what's going on? Dad says you locked him out, that you're being unreasonable. I closed my eyes, breathed slowly. Ethan, I need you to listen to me carefully. Your father wasn't locked out. He was asked to leave. There's a difference. A pause. Then sharp. But where's he supposed to go? You can't just... He's your son. I know who he is, I said softly. But being my son doesn't mean he owns me, or this house. His voice cracked. He said you're confused, that maybe you don't know what you're doing anymore. My hand tightened on the receiver. For a moment, Randall's words echoed in my head. Don't ever let them paint you weak. Ethan, I said firmly, I've never been clearer in my life. This is my home. The deed is in my name. Every bill for the last 50 years has my name on it. Your father is angry because I told him the truth he didn't want to hear. Silence. Then a reluctant, but he's stressed, Grandma. The mortgage, the loans, Toby's school. It's a lot. My chest tightened. I almost said, I know, I'll help. Old habits die hard. But then I remembered the thick folder of bank transfers, the endless receipts, the years of quiet taking. I love you, Ethan, I said instead. And your brother too. But I am not a bank. I am not a hotel. If you want to visit me, my door is open. But if you come here to demand or take, that door will stay closed. He was quiet, A long moment. "So that's it?" he asked finally. "You're just cutting us off?" "I'm setting boundaries," I corrected. Boundaries that should have been set years ago. Before he could argue more, I added gently, "You boys still have your whole lives ahead. Your parents have jobs. They can make their own way. I've carried more than my share, and it ends now." I heard his breath catch. Whether from anger or hurt, I couldn't tell. Then the line went dead. Not long after, my younger grandson called. His voice was softer, almost hesitant. "Grandma, Dad's really mad. He says you hate us." My heart twisted. "Oh, sweetheart. Hate is the last thing I feel for you. I love you with everything I have, but love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Do you understand?" He didn't answer, just sniffled quietly. "I miss you," he whispered. Tears stung my eyes. "I miss you too. You can always come visit me. Anytime. But your father has to respect me first." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone. My hands shook, but not from weakness, from the weight of holding my ground. For years, I had believed that keeping peace meant giving in, that if I sacrificed a little more, wrote one more check, swallowed one more insult, I'd keep my family close. But it had only pushed them further, teaching them to see me as a resource instead of a person. Now, the lesson had to change. The kettle whistled. I poured myself tea and whispered to the empty chair across from me, "Randall, I think they finally know I mean it." The house was silent, except for the creak of the old fan. But somehow I felt him there, nodding in approval. The house was quiet again. Not the heavy silence of grief after Randall died, nor the tense hush of Jared's footsteps pacing through every room. This was a softer quiet, the kind that wrapped around me like a blanket instead of pressing on my chest. I sat in my chair by the window, tea steaming in my favorite cup, and let my eyes travel across the living room. Randall's photo back on the mantel, the old quilt folded neatly over the couch, the nightstand lamp glowing with the same warm light I'd used for decades, everything back in its place. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. The phone lay on the counter buzzing every so often. Jared's number, sometimes Marla's, once or twice, Ethan's. I let it ring. Whatever they wanted from me, I already knew the words. No. No more transfers. No more favors. No more apologies for being alive. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the way I thought I'd be. Anger had burned hot in me once, when Jared called me forgetful, when he said I'd burn the place down making tea. But that fire had cooled into something steadier. A steel thread running through my spine. I wasn't fighting anymore. I had already won. Because winning wasn't about shouting him down or proving myself in court. It wasn't even about showing the papers to his face. Winning was this: sitting in my own chair, in my own house, with no one to shove me out of my room or tell me I didn't belong. I thought of my grandsons, their voices on the phone, uncertain, caught between loyalty and fear. Maybe one day they'd understand. Maybe not. But at least now they'd know where the line was. I thought of Randall, how he'd warned me, half joking, but always serious underneath. Don't let them sit on your neck, Mabel, even if they're your own flesh and blood. I hadn't listened for years, but tonight, sitting in the quiet, I finally had. The locks gleamed new on every door. I touched the keys in my pocket, cool and solid, the sound of them clinking like music. This was not about revenge, not about cruelty. It was about dignity, about reclaiming the right to my own life, my own walls, my own bed. I sipped my tea and let the steam warm my face. I didn't want a war, I whispered into the silence. I just wanted my home back. And now I had it. The night deepened outside, cicadas buzzing in the dark, the porch light casting a golden pool across the cracked step Randall never fixed. I smiled at the imperfection of it all, because it was mine. Every creak, every chip, every faded corner, mine. When I turned off the lamp and headed for bed, my steps were steady. My breath was calm. For the first time in a long time, I belonged in every inch of this house. And as I slid under the quilt, keys safe on the nightstand, my last thought was simple, clear, and certain. I had not lost a son. I had regained myself. If you're reading this and you've ever felt small in your own home, ever felt erased by the very people you loved most, remember this. You are not too old, too weak, or too late to take back your dignity. Don't let anyone claim your life as theirs. Don't wait for permission to stand up. Change the locks if you have to. This is your house, your life, your name on the deed. Take it back.